First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody to this beautiful space. If you haven't been here before, this is called W2, and this is a community amenity space, part of the Woodwards development. And there's all kinds of amazing, neat things going on in this building, in this space, and we'll be hearing from some of the folks who work here later on in the meeting. And I'd like to just thank everybody for coming. And the first thing I want to do is just recognize and thank Ellen Woodsworth, who is the person who organized the forum tonight. Thank you, Ellen. Ellen's a former city councillor, and I think many people know of Ellen's work and her deep roots in the community, so it's great that she was able to help my office in putting this together tonight. And I'd also like to let you know that tonight this forum is being live streamed by rabble.ca. So we're hoping that people will be watching live on the internet at rabble.ca, or they can watch it later as well. So that's good. The word can spread that way. And we have some great speakers tonight, which I'll introduce in a moment, but just a couple of housekeeping things. Outside, there's a sign-up sheet. So if you want further information about what's going on with this bill, we'll certainly be happy to keep you involved in that and let you know. There's also a message sheet. And if you feel like writing down your comments and your concerns about this bill, I really invite you to write down your feelings, your comments, because Jasbir and I want to take them back to Ottawa, back to Parliament, and we'll make sure that somehow they get read into the record. You don't have to put your name if you don't want, but we want to make sure that we reflect what people are thinking and saying about this bill. So just keep that in mind. Now, just in terms of tonight's format, we have a number of panelists, and I'm going to introduce them, but I just want to give a very quick overview about this bill and what we're doing here tonight. The bill, as you know, is C-30, the Internet Surveillance Bill, and it was introduced February the 14th. Now, this bill was part of a package that you heard about in the federal election, where Harper said that they were part of their mandate, they have no mandate, but what they put forward was that they wanted to get a number of bills through the House in 100 days. You remember hearing that? Well, this is one of the bills. It was actually, it's a combination of 3 bills previously that were never brought forward. So this was part of their 100-day mandate. Of course, the other one that got an awful lot of attention and now has gone through is Bill C-10, which was the bill dealing with drug crimes and mandatory minimum sentences. And it seems very obvious to us that in Ottawa, that the Conservatives are more obsessed and intent on getting these bills through than they are in actually listening what people have to say about this legislation and whether or not it's legislation that has merit or what the problems are. And so that's what we're battling against. We're battling against a government that is just hell-bent on pushing through legislation. We've had, I think now, about 14 what we call time allocations, in effect gag orders, so that Parliament gets shut down from debating any further a particular bill. Now, what's interesting about this bill, though, is that it was introduced February the 14th, so that's a while ago, but it has not yet been debated. And that's very, very interesting, and we should take note of that, because the reaction that they got from the public, and if you remember, the first name of the bill was Protecting Children from Internet Predators Act. They always give these very dramatic names to bills, right? So that's what it was called, Protecting Children from Internet Predators Act. And then after Vic Taves, the public safety minister, made such outrageous comments and basically said anyone who opposes this bill is with the child pornographers and support child pornographers. The reaction they got was so strong that they actually renamed the bill, and now it's called the Lawful Access Act. So very, very clever and sneaky things that they do. But the fact that there's been such massive opposition thus far to this bill has actually prevented them from bringing it forward for debate at second reading. And I think we should see that as a good sign that the public pressure has been so strong. So I'm not going to speak a lot about the bill tonight. In fact, I'm not going to speak about it at all because we have our guest panelists to do that. But I do want to say that the goal of this meeting is one, to inform ourselves about the bill so people do understand why it is such a terrible piece of legislation and why we need to stop it. And the second part of the meeting that I would like us to focus on is, how do we stop the bill? What are we going to do? You know, it's a majority Conservative government. How do we actually stop this legislation from coming forward? So I'm going to ask the panelists tonight to actually deal with both of those questions, and they're going to make their comments for about 5 minutes each. And so really it's those two questions to discuss what you see as the impacts of the bill, but also if you have ideas about what we should be doing or what you've already been doing, because I know some of you have been very active already in building public pressure to stop the bill that has been very successful. So what do we need to do more about? What do we need to do more of? So that's the purpose of our meeting tonight. And what I'll do is I'll introduce our panelists, and then they'll each speak. First of all, we have Jasbir Sandhu, who I'm very pleased is here. Jasbir is a new Member of Parliament from Sayre, and he's the NDP Critic for Public Safety, and he will actually be on the committee that deals with this bill should it ever get to committee. Now, I hope, Jasbir, that you never have to deal with this bill at committee. If you don't, then we've been successful. So, but Jasbir has been studying this bill, and I know has got a lot of information to share with us. We also have Lindsey Pinto and Glyn Lewis, who are here from Openmedia. Glyn is from the Digital Action Committee for Openmedia. And both of you are going to tell us what you've been doing. And then we also have Jim Sayre, who's the president of the Vancouver Community Network. Hi, Jim. Thank you for coming. And the Vancouver Community Network is a free community server in Vancouver. It's very important to many communities. And of course, this bill has a big impact on internet servers, and so I'm sure that Jim will be raising that. And then I'm also very delighted that Michael Vonn from the BC Civil Liberties Association, who has been an incredible resource on many pieces of legislation that we've been battling from a sort of a civil rights, human rights, legal perspective. So very happy that you're here today as Michael. So I think what we'll do is begin with Jasbir, and I'll give you a little warning when we're about 5 minutes, and then we'll have some discussion, comments, questions, and take the discussion from there. So Jasbir.
Thank you. Just stand up.
Up to you.
I think I'll be okay here. Thank you, Libby. It's glad to be here today. I had to come out all the way from Surrey, so it's glad to be here. Actually, this 5 minutes is probably not enough to talk about everything, but I'm going to stay towards the political side of it, what's happened over there. Back in the early 2001, 2003, this bill was introduced by the Liberal government. It was called Bill C-51, 52, 53. It was very similar to the bill we have in front of us right now. And then again, the bill was introduced by the Conservatives in 2009, and it died on the order paper because there was a proroguing and there was a new elections and all that. So the difference between the Liberal bill and the Conservative bill that's in front of us right now is there's not really much difference. But what they did do was try to be sneaky. They said, well, you know, the Liberal bill had 11 identifiers or 11 pieces of information that the police would have access through the surveillance of the telecommunication service providers. That, you know, we're really good, we want to protect public safety, public privacy, that we're going to reduce to 6 pieces of information that will identify personal information, and those include name, address, telephone number, email address, the internet protocol address, and local service provider identifying equipment and service that the service providers. But they didn't tell the public that, or Canadians, that they have a little backdoor that will allow them to add additional identifiers, additional pieces of information through regulation. So not only, you know, the 6 pieces of information that they can collect on you through the service providers, but they have a little back door, which is left open part of the bill, that'll allow you to add 5, 10 other identifiers that may be used to basically, I mean, this is not lawful acts or protecting children. This is about surveillance. This is about surveillance. There hasn't been any evidence that has been presented by the law enforcement agencies that would say that yes, we do need this to catch the child pornographers. We do need to catch the child predators. There has been no evidence provided by the Harper government to either the House or the journalists or the Canadians that will back their need for this warrantless access to information, personal information about Canadians. So one of the things that's been really powerful over and I know I'm getting short on time here. One of the things that's really helped in the, Harper government usually doesn't back away from anything. They have been very upfront, whether it was the census, and we've seen this with C-10. They usually don't back off on things they bring forward. However, the pressure has been so great from the internet community, from Canadians, because this is a fundamental value that Canadians have, is the right to privacy, is that we don't like the government sneaking into our bedrooms and trying to find out, going on a fishing trip to find out what Canadians are doing. And this is what it is. There has been no evidence. So they have backed off on this in a sense that they are scared. I think part of the reason they're scared is people like Openmedia, other Canadians sending thousands and thousands of emails and voicing their concerns in regards to them entering bedrooms of Canadians. So that is working. So they have backed off. They're talking about sending this directly to committee. We basically said, well, no, that's not where it needs to go. It needs to go back to the drawing table and redraft the bill that will actually help catch predators or child pornographers. And you have to have evidence behind that. So that is our position, that take it back to the drawing board, get it reworked, then we'll see where we want to go with this. So I think with that, I will pass it on to our next speaker.
Great.
Want to just introduce yourself again?
Sure, absolutely. And thank you, both of you. It's been really great. It's really great to be here. So I'm Lindsey Pinto. I'm the communications manager at Openmedia.ca. And so for those of you who don't know, Openmedia is a national, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that essentially safeguards the open and affordable internet. We have a community of Canadians that's over 500,000 people strong, who are essentially just saying that they want an open platform where they can engage in cultural and democratic discourse freely, openly, with the ability to access a diverse range of opinions, and without the threat of surveillance and the threat of government surveillance specifically. So, of course, when these bills came down, we were very concerned. We saw that the lawful access bills would be a huge expansion of surveillance powers that would allow for surveillance of the online activity of any Canadian at any time without a warrant. And so the warrantless aspect is really huge. And so if these bills pass, as NDP Sandhu has touched on, we're looking at a future where a range of authorities will have the ability to invade the private lives of law-abiding Canadians and our families using our internet. Which is really invasive. It's this radical break from existing safeguards. It leaves our personal information really subject to further cybercrime, because we're talking about creating, what the Conservatives apparently hate most, which is just a giant data registry, a giant unsecure data registry, which will of course be costly to many Canadians, which is kind of the third prong of our argument here. It's warrantless, invasive, it's costly, and overall this bill is poorly thought out. It was recently revealed that, the Conservative government recently revealed that it would cost about $80 million, and this is a low estimate. We're talking about internet service providers, and I'm sure Bill at the Vancouver Community Network will talk about this a little bit more, but, we're talking about networks having to expand their surveillance powers to allow for multiple simultaneous intercepts for really what is a huge expansion of surveillance powers, a change to the framework of the way the internet service works in general, and possibly a change to the attitudes of Canadians online. And in an age where, we are already falling behind in our digital economy, and we want to encourage participation, not discourage it. So we at Openmedia.ca, in order to fight this bill, we did what we did best. We set up an online petition at stopspying.ca. And we started to gather signatures. And this was when the Conservatives first introduced this bill. I shouldn't say first introduced, but first reintroduced this bill this time around. They made a promise during election time to introduce this online spying bill as one of a series of bills to be collected in the omnibus crime bill and passed forward kind of all at the same time without the kind of time that is needed for proper deliberation. So we gathered a fairly large number of signatures there. I believe it was 60,000 before the bill was actually introduced in Parliament. And we had our first major success of the campaign, which was when the omnibus crime bill came out. The lawful access bills were omitted. So the government removed the lawful access bills from the omnibus crime package, and around the same time when this happened, this Maclean's journalist Jesse Brown wrote a column an article called "Slacktivism Defeats Lawful Access," and we sort of laughed at this, and we were really happy. But yeah, lots of people just had clicked a few buttons to sign the petition. But getting people to do that required, a massive pro-internet community. It required people to do things like volunteer for us to spread the word, doing, really simple actions, to doing really complex and interesting actions like, creating funny videos. We had a few broadcast quality videos that were broadcast a few times on CTV and CBC News, to create public service announcements for radio, to call journalists and tell them how important this is, to write letters to the editor. And frankly, looking at all of the things that the community did to spread the word and to gain support behind one message, which was stop online spying. We do not want these bills. We saw that this community is anything but lax. So a better word for this, and that was kind of introduced at the end of this article, was saying interactivism. Essentially saying that people will do an amazing thing when they're presented with an open, shared platform, like the internet. So essentially using the internet to save the internet. And it's something that we're very happy to be able to do as an organization, something that we're very happy to facilitate, and we're incredibly proud of the Canadians who have come out against lawful access. Anybody who has done things like spread the word on Twitter, using creative hashtags like TellVicEverything, where people were tweeting the mundane details of their personal lives at Public Safety Minister Vic Davies in order to demonstrate how invasive and excessive these bills were, to things like what NDP Sandhu has done, which is write letters to Harper expressing, in great detail the problems with these bills legally and for Canadian society in general. So the latest on this bill, as was touched on as well, is that after this massive public outcry, after the bill was introduced, and a huge deal of media backlash after Vic Davies essentially characterized anybody who stood against the bill as standing with child pornographers, which, as somebody vehemently opposed to this bill, I was not very pleased with. We see that the Conservatives have started to back down. There's a little bit of dissent within the ranks. A few Conservative MPs have even come out saying that they're not so sure about these bills anymore. I mean, this is not just protecting children from internet predators, and it's not even protecting children from internet predators. There has yet to be a case in which the police have been able to show that the current system of warrants and court oversight has been a problem for catching child pornographers or any violent or serious crimes. So after all of this outrage, the Conservatives have suddenly started to back off. They have delayed the bills very quietly in a Friday night press release. And so now we're hoping that they're scrapping the bills altogether. And if they do go to committee, we're hoping that MPs like Mr. Sandhu here will be able to play a role in making sure that these don't go through. So, in sum, and we're running out of time, but just what you can do as a Canadian citizenry is to, add your name to the petition at stopspying.ca. We have tons of other actions, including telling your MP to stand up against online spying at openmedia.ca/standwithus, and you can speak with Glyn and I afterwards about some other things that you can do as well.
Thank you, Lindsey, and thank you, Libby. My name is Glyn. I'm the Digital Action Coordinator for Openmedia.ca. I'd just also like to thank, actually, Libby, for meeting with Open Media last spring when we were on Parliament Hill Libby was kind enough to take us in and to listen to us as we were launching our report, Casting an Open Net, which is really Open Media's vision, written in a pretty thorough and researched document about what it's going to take for Canada to become a digital leader once again. So thank you so much, Libby, for that. One thing interesting I learned about Lindsey yesterday is that she has 6 alarms that go off starting at 5 a.m. for different things that she has to do. And so I just want to also say how hardworking some of the people are behind these communities and behind these efforts. And we wouldn't be here where we are today if it wasn't for some very skilled and dedicated people. Out of interest, how many people here had heard about the online spying bills before today? Okay. Of the people who've heard of it before, how many people have actually signed Open Media's Stop Online Spying petition? Oh, wow. Okay. Of all of you, how many people took that extra step to share it through Facebook or Twitter? Okay. So out of interest, for yourself, for example, what is it about this bill that really bothers you, that really angers you?
Well, I think that it's the entire, the fact that my life is private to me, the fact that what I do online is what is my own personal business, and the idea that, because I want privacy means that I'm siding with anybody bad is just as silly as saying because you don't want to go to the bathroom in a clear bathroom in the middle of the town, in the middle of the city square is bad. Privacy isn't a bad thing.
Do you want to repeat the question because people want to just even summarize his
Sorry, the question was, what is it about online spying that really bothers you? What is it that you really have learned about the bill and you say, this is what I've pinpointed in saying, I do not like this. I do not want to see this happen in Canada.
And the answer for the live stream is no?
Oh, okay.
Nobody can hear his response.
Oh, so the response was essentially along the lines of privacy isn't a bad thing in and of itself, that we're entitled to it. It's a right, and so that should be protected in essence, especially when it's personal. And I think at some point during the campaign we came up with this term. Some things are personal, and think of all the things that you share with your loved one, with your family, with your banking institutions, with just think of the sheer things that you put out between two people, and you think, if I'm Skyping my girlfriend or if I'm sending a message to somebody, some of those things are personal, and the very notion, I think this is what the member here in the audience was getting to, is that privacy should be protected. And the reason I asked the question, and the reason why I think this is so interesting is about people who know about the issue, people who sign the petition, people who are willing to share this action with their own networks, is that and essentially the story that this gentleman just told us is that that's the role that we see ourselves at Open Media, is to be a platform for engagement and to be a platform for people to tell their own stories. And that's, I think, partly of why we've seen such a strong, powerful, effective backlash against this insidious, costly, and invasive set of spying bills, is that we have so many people who are leveraging the sheer power and the sheer power of the internet to tell their story, to engage people, and to fight back. And I'm starting to get to the point where I think governments, regardless of stripes, are going to have to really recognize the internet as a force that's going to stand up for itself when it's under threat, if it's surveillance, if it's because of increased costs, if it's because it's being neglected, because the proper investments aren't happening. So I can't really add too much more. I think Lindsey did a really good job, but I guess one of the thoughts that I'd like to leave on this note is not only is the internet fighting back, but the internet is being incredibly innovative about how it's fighting back. Lindsey kind of alluded to it, we've got people who are volunteering with Open Media or through Open Media to create videos. We had a couple of developers who, for the life of me, I can almost ensure that they've never really been to a protest rally before, but who wanted to start coding for us and to develop some very effective and powerful online engagement tools. These are people who did it from the comfort of their basement or their home or their kitchen or a coffee shop, and they're starting to use their own capacities in some really amazing, imaginative, powerful ways. And I think that's one of the things I think that in this moment that we're in right now, when the internet's trying to fight back and protect itself and save itself from online surveillance, from usage-based billing, and things of this nature, that we're shifting, the tectonic plates of political activism are shifting right under our very feet, and I think that's really interesting.
Thank you very much, Glyn, and we'll go over to Jim. If you want to introduce yourself.
Is this mic working? Yes, apparently so. My name is Jim Sayre. I'm the current president of the Vancouver Community Network, which I'll refer to as VCN. VCN was formed in the mid-90s to provide access to the information highway for everyone who needs it, regardless of their financial situation. We applied for charitable tax status. The government turned us down, and we went to the federal court. And the court agreed, interestingly enough, that providing access to the information highway in the current generation is similar to people back in the days of Queen Elizabeth I who provided access to the physical roads and bridges of Elizabethan England. And that was one of the original categories of charity law. And the court also answered an argument which was made by the government against us, which was that, well, people use the internet for all sorts of non-charitable reasons. They do selfish things, they do criminal things online, so how could it be charitable to provide access? And the court said, no, it's charitable because you're providing a public good in providing access to the information highway, regardless of what some people may or may not do on it. And I think that's relevant to the excuse that the government is using today, that they need to abridge everybody's freedom and everybody's privacy rights because some people are bad people and they might be doing something wrong. The information highway is itself a public good, and it won't be a public good, it won't be an effective public good unless it remains private, as the gentleman up here in the front said. I think it's a very good analogy. There's nothing wrong with going to the bathroom. We all do it, but we don't want to do it in public, and we don't want a police officer being able to access a video of us doing it a month from now because, for whatever reason. I'll tell you the good news from our perspective. As Bill C-30 is currently drafted, VCN is exempt. And that's because there are two schedules to the Act which exempt various types of internet providers, one of which is registered charities. So we're lucky in that respect, but only to the extent that people access the internet through our free dial-up service. And of course, I'm sure most of you know that dial-up isn't all that effective anymore. So even most of us on the board of directors, with the exception of Tony, who's sitting back there, most of us use high-speed access at home. And when we use high-speed access from a commercial provider, our privacy would be just as much liable to be compromised by Bill C-30 as anyone else. So simply being a VCN user is no protection against having, well, let me tell you what probably one of the most disturbing things from an ISP's perspective that Bill C-30 would do. It would allow the police to come to an internet provider, except for the ones that are exempt, and give them an IP address and say, does everyone know what an IP address is? Okay. And say, we would like to know, for the purposes of law enforcement, and that is defined in Bill C-30 as anything related to, get this, related to the enforcement of any federal, provincial, or foreign law. So that's all they have to do. They don't need reasonable cause to believe that the person has committed a crime. They don't even need suspicion that the person has committed a crime. They may not even think the person has committed a crime. They may just want to know, well, you were talking to somebody who was talking to somebody else who we think may not be up to any good. So we need to know who you are, you being whoever owns this IP address, so that we can come and interview you. And once you're interviewed, once that information is disclosed, it would be added to a database. There is no telling how large this database would get because there's no court supervision, no court order required for them to get this personal information. And once they've got it, there don't seem to be any sanctions or any remedies in the Act if it turns out that they didn't need it. Now, with a barn door that large, I can't imagine how any police officer could make a demand that wouldn't fit under Bill C-30 because the standards are so low. But even if they did, there don't seem to be any remedies in there for allowing that person's identification to be removed from the database. It's going to be there, and it's going to stay there. So we're worried about this, and VCN has always been worried about this. Back in 2000, when we had our annual general meeting, and this was a couple months after 9/11, our membership unanimously passed a resolution saying that we would not, our staff would not provide any information about our users without a court order. And that has been confirmed at subsequent meetings. That's still our official position. If Bill C-30 passes, and as I say, we're exempt, so we may not be faced with this choice. But if our exemption was removed, and we were put in a position where we were told we had to disclose information about our users, we'd be between a rock and a hard place. I think we would very seriously think about refusing to obey the order and raising charter and other grounds to try and challenge it. But there's no guarantee that that would be successful. Far better to defeat the bill politically and make sure that nobody has to face that choice. A couple of things that haven't been mentioned. The bill will require internet providers, who are not exempt, to give the police a list of the names of the people who will be responsible for answering requests for information. Those people, in turn, will be subject to security checks. Now, there's no provision in the Act that I can see for what will happen to somebody who fails a security check, or what will happen to someone who simply says, I don't consent to having a security check. So there's worker rights that are infected by this, potentially affected by this legislation. There's also a huge cost involved. I think one of the other speakers mentioned $80 million. I'm not sure how much it is, but in 2009, the Canadian Association of Police Chiefs decided that it would only be fair to have a special, what do they call it now? Public safety tariff added to everybody's cell phone bill and everybody's internet access bill to pay the costs of this, because they said it would be a conflict of interest for some reason, which I can't fathom, for the police themselves to have to pay for this legislation out of their own pocket. So all I can say is, where's Bill Vander Zem? Because we're probably going to need to bring him back. And once again, there is some protection in the sense that only a certain number of police officers will have the authority to make these demands, but there's also a provision which says that any police officer can make it in urgent circumstances, and then they have to make a report to one of the designated ones within a few days. Again, there's no indication of a remedy for what will happen if somehow it turns out that it wasn't all that urgent after all, whether there's any way of getting that information removed. I rather doubt it. And I just want to say a real quick word about Bill C-11, because there's a synergy that's going to occur between the copyright amendments and this bill. Under the copyright amendments, which we are not unfortunately exempt from, anyone who claims a copyright has been violated can come to an internet provider and demand to know, or demand that the provider preserve the record of who was using the IP address in question for 6 months. They don't get it, so it's different from C-30 in that sense. But the provider would have to preserve it. Now, what happens if the provider, such as a small group like ours, which we only have a handful of employees and we rely on a large number of volunteers to carry on our services? What happens if the provider inadvertently deletes the information? There is a minimum $5,000 statutory damage award that the copyright claimant can get without any proof of loss. My concern about that, the reason I say it's relevant to C-30, is that it will provide a huge financial incentive on internet providers to preserve all of their subscriber records indefinitely, because the costs of accidentally deleting a record and then being hit with one of these statutory damage awards are enormous. And I don't see anything in Bill C-11 that even allows the court to waive that penalty if it should find, for example, that the information was deleted accidentally. It's a minimum $5,000 and I think a maximum $10,000 per incident. So quite literally, 100 demands like that if somehow we forgot to preserve that information could bankrupt our organization. Now, the second question for tonight was what can be done to defeat the bill? Obviously, public pressure is the biggest and perhaps the only thing the government's likely to listen to. They've got to be convinced that if they pass this bill, they're going to pay the price for it in future elections. And signing online petitions, calling your MP, writing to your MP, meeting with your MP, writing letters to the paper, all of those things are very good ideas. I was struck when this bill was introduced, because it was introduced, was it on Valentine's Day? I remember that for some reason. It struck me as a peculiar time to introduce a bill that was supposedly directed at child pornography, but must be some twisted sense of humor the government has. In any event, only the week before that, the Parliament had had its last debate on ending the long gun registry. And I listened to that. Not that I'm a typical parliamentary junkie, but I happened to have CPAC on, and I listened to the speeches that were made then. And one conservative after another got up and made speeches about the failings of the long gun registry, which I thought could be applied far more accurately to Bill C-30. For example, they said over and over again, it will criminalize innocent people. Law-abiding citizens, innocent people. One of them said that it was an assault on the integrity of gun owners to be required to register. Well, C-30 will criminalize and insult the integrity of everyone who uses the internet, potentially. They said it would cost a great deal of money, which should be used for real crime prevention, putting boots on the street, as politicians like to put it. Well, I agree, and so will Bill C-30. They said it wasn't needed. They said there wasn't evidence that the gun registry had saved a single life. I suspect that's true. But there's also not evidence that the kind of access the government's requesting in C-30 would have saved a single life or will save a single life. They're introducing a massive assault on the privacy of Canadians without a shred of evidence that it's needed. And the very excuse, it was ironic that I think the same week that Taves stood up and outrageously accused all of us who oppose this legislation of being pro-child pornography, the police in Toronto had just busted a child pornography ring and arrested 40 people for possession of child pornography. Previously, the favored method of policy laundering for legislation like this was to refer to terrorism. Well, there's been no terrorist attacks successful in North America since 9/11. I'm told I have to wrap up, so one more point. So all of these things, all of these arguments can be used, and these are arguments you can use the Conservatives' own speeches, their own words. We have a majority government. We're going to have to persuade Conservative members to either in caucus to persuade their cabinet and their leader to withdraw the bill, or else to stand up and vote against it, which is a pretty brave act in the parliamentary system. And one final point that I thought is very important. The Conservatives said, in referring to the gun registry, that what it was doing was creating a shopping list for thieves and gangsters because the registry has been breached. Well, every online database gets breached. We all know that. The White House website got breached. The FBI's websites have gotten breached. Think of what a gold mine C-30 will create for identity thieves. Because they will be able to attach a name to IP addresses which they may have intercepted in some other way to get people's bank account numbers and other information that's being transmitted. And with that kind of information, just a few bits of it, they can create false identities and wreak havoc on people's lives. So that's an argument that I think politicians of every stripe ought to listen to, and perhaps will listen to. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. And I hated to cut you off because you were making great points. But hopefully more information will come out during the discussion. So I'd like to invite Michael to come up now from the BC Civil Liberties. So I'll go sit down there, and you can stay here, and then we'll get on to our discussion.
Thanks so much. So obviously we're talking to a room full of people who know a hell of a lot about this. And that's fantastic. So we're probably talking to the people that we owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to, under the guidance of groups like Openmedia, et cetera, You are part of the people who have brought awareness and education and pressure on the government about Bill C-30. Now, this is fantastic because I remember thinking, having been involved, the BC Civil Liberties Association involved in this issue since it first reared its ugly head, cybercrime treaty more than 10 years ago, et cetera. There was a grouping of privacy advocates in Canada last spring talking about what our strategy was going to be in lawful access. You have never seen a sorrier bunch of people. We were flopped on desks, pounding it, going, there is no hope, there is no hope, there is no hope. But then we remembered that you never know which way the wind is going to blow. And we didn't envision galvanizing the general public. We truly didn't. And so this has been a huge boon. We did not envision the language missteps that have done so much to bring awareness to this from the government's point of position. So these things have been huge. And one of the other kind of interesting developments is that they have had to, because the government has mishandled and the files so poorly, they had to bring out a cross-nation police press conferences. And their strategy was very interesting. Their strategy was, I called it the Cousin Vinny press conferences across the country, where the police showed up and said, oh my God, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. The misunderstanding is, you all think this is really bad and about surveillance, but really it's just these tiny little tweaks. Tiny, 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 nothing much, nothing much. Okay, so if you want to know what it is, I'll give you some options, because you probably already know a lot. But if you want to know questions about constitutional analyses, et cetera, we have a report out that's available on our website for free. Go and get it, bccla.org. And if you want to read the 100-page bill itself, please be my guest. The 3 parts of the bill, if you want to make it snappy for someone, is 1, the requirement to build surveillance infrastructure into the entire telecommunications architecture of this country first, which is a huge security liability for the entire country. Keep that in mind. You don't build in back doors that you're able then to defend. So that's one piece, first part. Second part, the subscriber information, which we've been hearing a lot about. The data elements that will probably include, through the regulations, all cell phone information that can be accessed by the police doing any function or duty of police or intelligence, which is a really important part that gets missed often. Who are the police interested in gathering information on? Well, we actually know this question. The biggest undercover operation and infiltration of in Canadian history was recently the demonstrators of the G20, the G8, and the Olympics. We know that First Nations people and First Nations activists have been under active surveillance since 2006. We know that environmentalists have very good reason right now to believe that they are being watched very closely. What is this about? Partially about policing, largely about intelligence. And what do we think something like subscriber information will give the police? We think it will give the police something that looks like this. An IMSI catcher, a device that you could put in my backpack over there and walk through a demonstration, could collect enough cell phone information in it to identify just about everybody under 45 in the demonstration, that being people who automatically carry cell phones without question, taking that information to telcos and saying, who do these belong to? Bing, 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 bing. We've just done a sweep of everybody in that space. That's an example of something that this might be used for, in a kind of, how do these data elements and how does it all fit together? That's how it could fit together. So understand that and remember that whatever else this is about in policing, it's going to be very heavily used for intelligence. CSIS is a big part of this. Intelligence-led policing is a big part of this. And thirdly, when the police tell you in their myth-busting mode that it's all about warrants, there's a lot of warrants. Well, there are a lot of warrants, but those warrants aren't on the standard that Canadians understand what warrants are about. And the standard, we know from television, is you have reasonable grounds to believe that a commission of a crime, there will be evidence of the commission of a crime where we're looking. That's not the standard for the new warrants. The new warrants have reasonable grounds to suspect what some people refer to as the spidey sense standard. Not even that a crime has been, that evidence of a crime will be there, but that information that will assist the investigation will be there. This is a much lower standard, it's much broader, this is sweeping, and it's important that we understand these legal niceties because they will have on-the-ground impacts for all kinds of people. So we need to do a little myth-busting about the myth-busting, right? But this dialogue that we're having back and forth has been, as I say, tremendous. And in answer to the question that has already been touched on, what can we do? I want to tell you something as a privacy advocate. We knew a while ago that there was going to be blowback on this from within the Conservatives' own constituents. This is not a partisan issue, although I take my hat off to parties who have done the lion's share of making a bunch of this stuff available to the public and really putting up a great advocacy campaign. We know as privacy advocates and civil libertarians that when we get invited to do talk radio in Alberta, it is usually for the purpose of bash a civil libertarian hour. It is not generally a cozy discussion that you're having with the talk radio show host. That's been my experience. It's my job to go on the show, so I do. But we have known for a long time that when we've been asked, and this is some years running, to come and talk about lawful access, we get stroked. There is not a partisan issue here. There is a strong libertarian wing of the Conservative constituency that understands privacy issues. And so if I had to say, what are the things that we need to do now, because we're talking to ourselves and we're educated and we've been doing the readings and we're talking to our friends, make new friends. Because quite frankly, this has an ear in places that we might not expect it. And it would be really good to make those connections, because I think that network, that's the next step, as far as I can tell. And educating people, as I say, the people who are wondering about what all the mystery is about. It's a 100-page bill. Nobody's going to read it. Go to the reports, go to the summaries. We've got a lot of great tools to help you with that. And thank you so very, very much for giving privacy advocates in Canada some much-needed heart, because we haven't seen community mobilization like this maybe ever. So thank you kindly.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. And those were great presentations. And I know folks here, you know some about the bill, but I'll tell you, the more we hear about it and the more we actually understand not only the bill itself, but the implications, the broader implications, then I think it just compels us to work really, really hard to make sure that this bill is defeated. So I think it's been a very good discussion. Now, what we want to do now is just open it up for questions, comments. And again, I really encourage folks to focus on what do you think we can do to stop the bill. And we've had basically three general suggestions. One is, of course, the public pressure, and Openmedia and others have been doing an incredible job of this on the internet itself with petitions, various actions. So that's very important to continue. I think, Jim, you brought out a really good point, which was trying to expose the incredible contradictions of what the Conservatives themselves are doing, whether it was the census, which they eliminated on grounds of privacy, or whether it was the long gun registry. You know, we had a big fight to try and at least keep the data. And they said, no, that couldn't be done because that was also invading privacy. So pointing out the contradictions, I think, is very good. And now the third suggestion from Michael, which is somehow we've got to get beyond ourselves and we've got to make connections with small C conservatives and people who actually do value civil liberties, privacies, and get to those conservative backbenchers. We've seen this happen before, actually, on some legislation. It happened on the natural health products, where the conservative members got really nervous because they were hearing from their constituents that they didn't want natural health products to be regulated, and so they backed off. So there is, we do have some wins that we can look to.